let me just read a brief snippet overview of General Sinamela, because some of you may not know him, but he's a highly accomplished officer. And the first time I met him, he speak very passionately about security issues, particularly in the defense. You speak almost similar to Dr. Masiapato. I don't know if you are both coming from Limpopo, but I'm not sure. So he's got very extensive expertise in information warfare, cyber defense, military communications. And I think this year, on the 17th of Jan, he was then promoted to the position that he's holding now. You know, over the course of the years, he has been a leader in various places, including the director in the Cyber Command, as well as working in the SA Communication Security Agency, and various others, including being a chief of staff in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So this is a man who knows, you know, everything about defense on the ground. And I want you to now give him a proper round of applause. Thank you very much. So the next one, you know, as they said earlier, we always struggle to have females within this domain. And I think it was also very important, as Mamela mentioned, to have women in the mix, because they normally say when there are women in the mix, men think properly, you know. And we have Males Ndlovu. She's the head of space innovations at TIA, Technology Innovation Agency. She has been involved in the development and commercialization of technology at different levels, and now managing the full life cycle of technology development. And, you know, she has been at various places, but I think she has found her peace at TIA. That's all I can say. Let's give her a round of applause. And then we have our own. I think this, I said to Edwin, you must represent the CSIR very well. So Edwin Magidimisha is, where is he? Is here, is one of our senior scientists and the research group leader, particularly in electro-optronics and remote sensing. So he will be sharing with us some of the work that he's doing. He's currently doing his PhD as well. Let's give him a round of applause. And then we also have one of, you know, as the Mamela mentioned earlier, we work a lot with the SMMEs, particularly in supporting and developing them. This is ingrained in our strategies, the CSIR. And I think Sujo is one of our, you know, person that we have worked with across different areas in the area of security. So he's the managing director at 3Frames and Sparks. He's a technology advocate. You know, at every 4 o'clock in the morning, he will send me something that is happening in Europe, why they're teaching Microsoft. And I'm sure he's going to be talking about that. Let's give him a hand. And then we also thought it's very important, at least in this caliber, to have a doctor in the mix. You know, without a doctor, this panel might not be as strong as the previous one. So Dr. Mtobisi Zondi will join them. And I think Mpahlele earlier on spoke, you know, we can't read all those positions. There are too many. Doc, you must share. She is the CEO and the executive chair at Sandok Austral Group, and then strong leadership in defense, as he has said. And his PhD is mechanical engineering. And he also did something on transport economics, as they said earlier. So what we are going to do, maybe let's give them a nice round of applause and welcome them nicely. They will get some mics, and then we will immediately start. So, as I said to Mpatlele earlier, this is not about us, because we can talk too much, me and him. So this is about the audience. So we will first introduce the Brigadier General to start with his speech. And I thought, when I looked at it, it was very thought-provoking, Spunk. So we must carry some notes and be able to write down. General, over to you. Here is your point. You have about 15 minutes to address us. I will show you slides very shortly. Over to you. Over to you, General. Over to you. Okay, no, it's fine. I think then I was a man indeed. If it was probably I couldn't see that, you can't see. You can come sit this way. That's fine. Over to you, General.
Thank you very much. usually in the military we start with a protocol. So I'm not sure if I will be offending anyone if I don't read any protocol. But if there was protocol that was observed from this morning, then allow me to write on that very same protocol. I'm Brigadier General Mpaka Samuel Senamela. I come from Limpopo, yes, of course. It was so nice listening to the previous panel, the plenary, and it's so nice to see the accolades and the PhDs and all those things and the knowledge. But most importantly, I like the knowledge that you guys have. No, but it's not moving.
It's a forward, press the arrow.
I'm pressing, okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I was privileged to that maybe before I start, I should put a disclaimer to say that I support the government of the day, irrespective of who is in charge. It can be Democratic Alliance, it can be whoever, it doesn't matter. So I need to be careful of my wording and the tone, because at our level, we are very much sensitive. However, this is the aim of which I will be writing on, just to present to the researchers and the developers of technology on how we see things and the way we are so misaligned. Maybe after this presentation, most of you will be able now to tap into our mindset and the way we go through our military strategic analysis in order to analyze enemy, and how you can actually build technology for us to be able to employ it in there, or to execute my mandate, which is to defend and protect the territorial integrity of this country and also its people. And sometimes I don't do it within the borders of South Africa. Even if I'm outside, I'm preventing the influx of people to come to South Africa. So we rather go and fight wars outside rather than wait for war to come this side. Like now we'll be having the Tutulas victimizing everyone in the country. I'm not sure whether they're victimizing or they are doing well. So this is just a takeaway, which I say aligning technology research and development with the needs of the user is where the real challenge lies, and it involves way more than just the work performed on the technologies. This is what you can take home. And maybe Dr. Zondi is here. You know, he worked a lot with research and development. They've been giving us a lot of technologies, weapon systems. But now, you know, my mind, I ask myself, if people understand what we want, do you understand the gaps that exist within the military? Do you understand the enemy that you are fighting against? Do you understand the Western and African politics? Because you need to, you know, align yourself with the West, the Eastern Bloc, and from there you understand the Eastern African community. Then you bring it down to the SADC, and then you understand who are the aggressors within the African battle space before you can start developing. If you understand the aggressors in the African battle space, then you'll understand who is their friend. Then from there you'll know the technologies that they have. And then you'll also understand the weapon systems. From there you come back, you start developing to counter the immediate and the future threat. But now business, you only bring solutions to us to say here's a solution and people buy. And you know, business, they want to make money. So I'm trying to bring you to think like us. Give me something that I want. It's obvious government is in the hands of politicians, and then these politicians are voted by us. We put them in power, and it's not a crime to be a politician. And people must not be ashamed to align themselves with politics. In order for military to be strong, you require political will, because these are people who are actually in charge of the governments and who are in charge of defense forces because of the political oversight. You know, we are just a tool to be used after politicians have failed in their field. You know, when politicians fail, they send us to go and be killed or either to kill people. So with just a limited budget that we have, We don't have rents and cents to waste. Hence, I'm saying to industries to say that walk with us, come and listen to us and understand how we think, and then build or develop technologies that we want or weapon systems. Don't just bring something then because you want to keep your business afloat. You have a responsibility also to contribute into defending your own country. This is the only country that we have. So if you don't give us what we want or what is actually needed to win war, you are also putting your life in danger. So don't think only about profits. You know, it's so naive, Doctor, to think that our neighboring states or sister countries are actually our friends. You need to analyze how they talk. You know, you need to analyze the tone. I won't mention a name, but there was another minister, you know, who went viral on national TV, their own national TV, to say, we are not another province of South Africa. They must not think what. You know, in the diplomatic arena, you don't talk like that. But that gives you a thing to say, in closed doors, what are they saying about us? You get my point. So if you think that, now remember South Africa, we took Israel to ICJ, and then now you look into the developments whereby Iran is also joining BRICS, and you understand the politics of the West and the East, and we are part of BRICS. So you must, it must bother you to say what's coming. And then the aggressors in the African battle space, they are going around building bases, and you know, they have their footprints all over in the African countries, and that tells you that war is just on our doorstep. On our doorstep. We fought fiercely in Mozambique. After we cleared the enemy, then those other guys, Mozambique just says, thank you, South Africa, and they started occupying Mozambique. And now we need to be worried, because now they want to build a permanent base there. It shows you that there is a lot of spies within our country, and we need to counter that as a country. But to do that, we need technology. And that comes to you, academics, the gentleman with the 2 PhDs. I was so afraid I said here. The best thing I know is to plan war, fight, and lead my troops. This is where now you come to understand who is your adversary. I cannot come to you and say, give me this type of drone. You know, when you were running left, right, and center last year with drones trying to develop, particularly CSIR, that was my request when I was in DRC, because I managed to analyze that vehicle very well. We intercepted and we realized what capability they have. And I realized that you guys are not giving us what we want. How am I going to counter this enemy? Is there a member from the media here? Okay. How am I going to counter this enemy? So, human by itself is not enough. We need technology and human in order to go and verify what technology has gave us as military professionals. You know, like I said, business, the problem with the business is that you want to make money. Of course, we've got kids to feed, we've got employees to pay, we've got all those other things to pay. But it's so bad that you are giving us something that I cannot use. You know, I remember when we were marching on the 30th of May, when we were approaching the objective, when we were actually going to war, when we were going to fight. Then I realized that one of the capabilities that I had, it could do a certain job. Remember, I said I need to be mindful of what I'm saying. For 4 kilometers, I will not say what is it. And by that time, you are already engaged with an RPG-7. And then, unfortunately, Sujo, one of the APCs that I was in with Force Commander, was hit with a mortar, a guided mortar. But we survived. We survived. And that thing made me brave to say, I need to stand up. We cannot keep quiet anymore to say that I will stand up and say something. It becomes a career-limiting statement, where else I can foresee that war is just tomorrow. you need to understand the problem and what you're putting on the market. I know AMSCO and CSIR, guys, we've been busy with a lot of things. You are busy, and I know my good doctor, when was still there at the DMD, he knows what I'm actually talking about. But the doctor, what we need to agree is that most of the things that we were doing, they were not aligned with the world order. Because when Egypt now can display its capabilities, you will be afraid. I'm not touching the China, parade last time. I'm now talking about Egypt. And you ask yourself, have you seen a Zimbabwean parade capability display? No. Have you seen Tanzania? No. Why are we always putting our capability in? Are we trying to scare other people? We need to answer that question. It's good to rely on technology, but it's also not good. You are a soldier first before you can rely on technology. If you analyze the tension, and that was not war, Iran and Israeli tension, and I'm telling you that something big is coming, because in such a space, you can tell that for that tension to cool off a little bit, one realized that I was actually in trouble, and he ran to Big Brother. And now Big Brother had to say, guys, let's drink, let's top drink in Africa's. But you know that something big is coming. So a soldier needs to understand, what technology does he have? I want your brain to be imparted on my soldier, but I want his body, mind and soul to fight war. So I want him to be equipped with both weapon systems, his experience as a soldier, but I want your brain, because I want him to operate that machine. Without a soldier operating that machine is useless. We saw Iran systems destroying Israeli Iron Dome. Is Iron Dome relevant anymore? Maybe we need something to dominate magnetic spectrum, whereby this thing will sense each and every bomb that comes, or either it's a hypersonic missile, then it must be able to defuse it. How long do I have now? 3 minutes to go. Oh, now, this is where it comes, whereby the recruitment of the Department of Defense must concentrate more at school. It's about time that now we need to stop just sending out advertisement. We need to go to school, earmark these youngsters with mathematics and science, because we are bringing stuff that even myself, I cannot operate. I'm a commander, I'm punishing my troops that you cannot operate this, but I cannot operate it myself. So we need people who can actually think thoroughly. Partnering with you guys is very much important. We cannot rely anymore on to the West. I think that one we need to admit as people. But then we partner with you, and then are you patriotic enough that whatever I'm partnering with you, you give it to me, won't you give it to another people? South African people are suffering from patriotism. And then I think we need to change our laws and our constitution. Maybe we need to be like DRC and have a firing squad. Maybe we need to, I'm a killer. Unfortunately, I cannot talk like a doctor or a nurse. So we need to do away with a lot of rights. We need to de-unionize, do away with unions. We need soldiers who are mentally, spiritually, and physically fit. I need a soldier who I can say, go and even kill South African. He can go and kill you without mercy. Remember, I kill without getting angry. I don't have to get angry before I kill you. I just have to be told that go and kill Sujo. Then I do it. It's my job. When I was in DRC, and then when we were doing target acquisition, particularly when we had to deploy G5 to destroy enemy who was in Marsha Hills and somewhere in Jerusalem Mountain, and we realized that those with the power, technological power, they shifted the GPS. So you do your target acquisition, then you don't hit the correct target. Then you had to now deploy battlefield surveillance to be very much close to the enemy to tell you that move your fire to 60 degrees to wherever, 25 degrees, 600 to whatever direction. That was so bad. We need to host our own satellite. We must own our own target. We must have it there. You saw Iran they switched off the US GPS, and then they went and procured something in China, and then they managed to hit the target. How can I trust some other people's security? Is it secured enough? Doesn't it have a backdoor extraction mechanism? So we are looking at you, CSIR, to come up with something that will secure our weapon systems. We need an early warning, a proper one. I need drones with anti-jamming, but that can also jam. Automatically, that can be able to identify a friend or foe, a drone or aircraft or anti-air missiles and all those things, so that we can be superior either on land, in the skies, everywhere else. And that is where you guys are coming. I need to be able to disrupt an enemy. If you can build an APC, when my troops are inside the vehicle and there's a sniper somewhere else with a technology that can sense, once you shoot, that technology can sense that the sniper or whoever come from this side, measure the distance, and the turret will automatically turn and destroy the enemy without my troops being able to debuzz from the APC. We save lives so that we can save them to go and mop up in the front line, or deep into the enemy fronts. All these things I'm talking from the lesson learned. We were in Central African Republic, we were in Sudan. I fought battles in Jabal Mara next to the border of Chad also. We fought here in Mozambique. I fought in DRC, and I was part and parcel of planning from the beginning up until the execution of. It's just media is not reporting the truth, and it's good for them because that's why I'm saying that you are misaligned. Yeah, how many minutes? Okay, it's up. Okay, you are misaligned in your thinking. Stop forcing technology on us. Come to us, work with us. I do military strategic analysis. I will tell you, I'm fighting, let me make use of a country that will not be sensitive. I'm fighting Zimbabwe. I know the president, I know the commander-in-chief, I know the chief defense, I know their intelligence chief, I know everyone, I know the commander who's being appointed, I know his strategies, I know the weapon systems. But you are giving me something that does not even have reach into Zimbabwe. You get my point? But this is just for sample. Yeah, I have two things that I worked with, but it's just that I'm in what do you call? Your projects takes long. We don't have luxury of time. When we were there, you did not even deliver even a single drone. But I wanted it yesterday. So DEP 1000 prescribed that you need to follow, before you can even start developing, just approval process to start with the project, it takes you almost 12 months. So you go to China, they develop now. So we need to do away with such tendencies. Just that my time is not here. This one I wish to read it one by one. Start by understanding the real challenges on the ground. Border management. We are procuring drones and body cams. Do we know what is happening with the Gomas in the Zimbabwean territory side? We can show you pictures. Do you know what capabilities they have? They are using extensive military equipment. So if your drone is up there one day, don't be surprised if they shoot it down. So, but yeah, I'm just giving you something to take home. And sure enough, local expertise are in the country to address these problems. We need you. We are tired of Now, if Microsoft can decide that they're going to switch off, what are we going to do? You get my point. So, Sujo, you need to think better than you are doing now. We need to train soldiers to a higher standard to deploy and operate technologies. So I need your brain in his body, but I need his will to fight. Adapt the technologies quickly to changing needs. Establish the golden thread where researcher to soldier takes responsibility to the overall development, acquisition, implementation, and effective use of technologies. Technology development is not static, it evolves. You know, once I know what Israel is using, I need to counter them for now. I need to counter them in the future. I need to keep on developing. It's not static. You don't give me something. I don't know where are there Daniel people here? So we need to have a company that is within, that is absorbed by the Department of Defense. It become part of our structure under Chief Defense, but obvious salaries must be competitive with the corporate world. But it must be there so that we can control you, so that you don't go and sell our IPs. Just to summarize, again, this is the first slide that I started with. I so wish I had enough time, and sorry for taking a lot of your time. But if you want to know, I know body parts of a human being. I know intestines hanging on a tree. So for us to prevent that, give us what we want. Thank you.
Hey, Gunzi. General, we have dinner after. Malese, come in. You know, this was a very thought-provoking talk. I hope you will have mercy on us. Over to you. Thank you.
Greetings again, distinguished guest. I would also just jump on the train and say all protocol observed. Okay, it's not a gun, it's a remote. Oh, okay. Full disclosure, I also have too much of military inclination and influence at home. So I am going to do my very best not to give you case studies of military applications. I am in the space domain. So as much as I am beginning, I am one of the people that can vow that we are and we will create the sovereign capability, space, infrastructure, so that you don't have to have GPS issues. However, I'll extend my preamble by saying I'm in a very, very expensive sector. So all the technologies that we will discuss here, they really require a high ticket. And I implore to my principal, which is the government of RSA, but also my industry partners that I work with in the value chain, to come on board so that we can pool resources. I'm going to give you comfort by showing you demonstrations of what has been done in a tune of less than maybe 500 million. But for us to get to a part where we can say we are resilient, we really need billions. For your comfort and to make up for the time, I am going to be very short and very brief because I'm just giving you an overview and we have plenty of time to engage offline. That was my introduction and my role.
This one.
This one.
Is it not moving? Okay, let's do this.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it there?
Okay, all right. Yeah, I have to now put the safety off from my gun and use the hands. Okay. And that's the topic, obviously, in line with the theme. And as I've said, I am going to cover the space side of what we are talking about in terms of national sovereign capabilities. for South Africa, but also it's a topic that is applicable for Africa as a whole, given the geopolitical shifts that are happening, but also even at grassroots level. The things that we should be doing should not be too exclusive that it doesn't get to the ground. So I hope that my presentation gives you comfort that we are recalibrating our thought processes towards providing things that have real utility and opportunity for economic redistribution as well. I'm going to give this topic around capability for disaster management. But as I've said, I will cover a holistic approach so that you can relate and see where else can we extract value from space tech into other domains. Because we are human, but we are also subjects to Mother Nature. And over and above, we still have issues where some disasters are man-made and some disasters are industrial. And how prepared are we to react to those and to also just survive as humanity, because we are living in a planet that also has its own requirements of us being its inhabitants. And sometimes we do a lot of transgressions against nature's rules, but we also need to plan proactively by monitoring our environment. And such a technology that we could do in disaster management also is applicable in communications and many other industries. And full disclosure, space tech comes from the military because it was invented when World War and we needed to find a way for troops to communicate. And it's a very, very big political weapon. Hence, I've said that it's one of the capabilities that South Africa should drive at a very accelerated pace, albeit that we find the money for it. This is my promo slide showing the audience what the country has done thus far. In terms of disasters, we have the South African National Space Agency. They've got a weather station, a very, very fancy one and very useful one. It's in Hermanus, Cape Town. We've got a large-scale satellite project that is called Square Kilometer Array. It's also Northern Cape. That's where we've got the biggest telescopes. All this media information we get from there. And we have, if I have to, I actually clustered them by ticket size. We have the Rolls Royce of remote sensing. As you saw that satellite up there, this is infrastructure upstream, but on the ground, as terrestrial humans, we get that, which is from remote sensing, then we use the information for a multitude of applications. So if you have the money, we can extend the existing capabilities that we have in synthetic aperture radar. This is where you've got satellites that is a capability that you can have in a different sizes or modality, but it's a capability that you can have that will give you information about your environment day or night. It's that good. It's that powerful. However, it's also quite expensive to undertake. But we have it in the country. We have projects that are underway that are focusing on SIR. And we also have K-line technologies. This is more or less much more fancier cameras that have capabilities to detect that which you instructed to detect. Case in point, fires. So we have CPUT that had launched the very first small satellite, we call them CubeSats, sometime in 2013 to demonstrate this capability. And also then in 2018, I stand to be corrected, we then launched 2 more satellites, one demonstrating our capability to monitor safety issues in the coastline, which is maritime safety, and the other capability was enhancing on the disaster management side of things. The 4th point, this is where the rubber hits the road. The biggest opportunity for us sitting in the room and SMMEs and even young innovators comes at the point where what do we do with this information that we get from these satellites? As much as I said we need a lot of money for us to have a sovereign infrastructure, I'm talking about constellations of satellites and places where we know we can get real rich images that we need to process. the downstream application of Earth observation data. This is where you get everything you need to know about the planet and everything you need to know about what you're doing on a daily basis. And you package that to solve governmental, societal, industrial, biomedical, military applications. This is where we can actually invite many SMMEs to become innovators, and then we create products that we will sell to the industry and end users, and to solve all societal challenges. I'm standing high level because I don't want to focus on one sector when space technologies actually addresses it's very cross-cutting. Yeah. It's an eagle in the sky. And as I've said, on the disaster relief efforts, you want to plan proactively before disasters happen, because if disasters happen, economies stand still. Lives are at risk, or maybe they are all gone, floods and whatnot. So we have to have systems that are helping us on proactive monitoring, but also have protocols that know how to extract information for planning purposes from those systems to the ground, to those that are affected. I'm ending here with recommendations in support of my previous esteemed speaker, the General. We have to advance space technologies, but not only in disaster management, communications, case in point, GPS, and many others. I'll give you a practical example where this competence was a bargaining chip between Ukraine and the US, where they said, Ukraine, how about we get those minerals because other people are saying otherwise? And if you are not interested, imagine a point in case where we switch off Elon Musk's technology. How are your troops going to fight the front line if they can't communicate? So how do you now come back to the negotiating table with such when you have that high reliance of tech over other nations? I've mentioned this point at 3 deliberately so. We are very good. We are a very talented country. We are a country of innovations. But from an invention point of view, we can come up with novel innovations any day. And we disclose those in IPs. We are very good. We've got the capacity for that. I've already proven with the use cases. However, in this industry, the best opportunity is for us to drive frugal innovations by taking that which exists, which is the data that you get from the space infrastructure, and packaging it to the needs of your client. That is how you'll make money the easiest, the fastest, and solve problems and get paid. And that is how SMMEs will come back and funnel back money to our GDP. Partnerships, as I've mentioned, because the money that we require is in great magnitudes. We need more people to come on board. And also, we need to merge disaster management systems actually to manufacturing, food security, health, logistics, distribution, supply chain networks, finance and banking. No one is going to invest in you if they are investing in a black hole. They need to be aware of the surroundings and the kind of ventures you are in. And they use actually space information to do that without even asking you. That's finance. But also at the same time, you as a business or a government, if you're planning for people, but you don't know the kind of disasters that are prone to affect your kind of planning, or rather you're somebody that is studying a venture and you're putting a lot of money in it, and you are not aware of what you are at risk at, you are actually prone to die more than survive. So we need to start having such perspectives by extracting all this value from space technologies. The last line is very, very important. We are privileged enough to be educated, scientific, and problem-solving individuals. However, if we don't take these complex systems that we come up with every day to the ground, to the grassroots level, where we train communities, community liaisons, and even young people on how to extract these value that we get from science, We are leaving people behind, and we only go back to see them when we want their votes. And that is not how you develop a capable and resilient state. I will end at that point, and I thank you for your time.
Hey, yeah. This afternoon is a bit tough. But look. Thank you very much, Malese, for that thought-provoking presentation once more. And I saw that there is some generally new, a little bit of this. It's just that you didn't show it. And then, Moren, I think take it easy on us.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't be too hard. It's in the afternoon. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I had to recalibrate after listening to the general's talk. Yeah. But I think he will also consider the dinner proposal so that we can further discuss. War is real. And on the space side, I saw one post where a US company captured a Chinese satellite, spy satellite in space. Considering the speed that satellite was actually, moving, and the precision in terms of snapping or taking a snapshot of that satellite. That confirmed to me that things are happening while we are being what we call spectators. Things on the ground that are not moving can be captured easily. If you can capture a satellite that is moving, I don't know, 1,000 meters per second, I don't know. But you can verify. Then what happened? Why am I saying it's a war? It's because after that, DDG, we then find that the Chinese themselves, they went back and said, okay, you have captured our satellite. And then they also captured the US satellite in such a precision that they were able to even give you the dimensions of how big it is. Okay, but let's get back to the title of today. So I'm happy that TIA, they've already represented us very well there on the K-line payload, the work that we've been doing for some time, where we needed to find a sovereign system for the detection of fires. And why we wanted the sovereign system is the one that will be compact enough, low swap, to be able to fit on the nano site. And thereby, we can be able to replicate for constellation. And that was actually why we went into this project, as well as to ensure that there is precision in terms of the intelligence of the fire, such as progression, as well as fire sizes. Because most of these sensors that we have, such as your MODIS and the rest, most of them they are using IR, and we wanted to migrate from that. But the disasters that we are referring to, or why I am here, is the fire, and we have already seen many evidence. We won't talk about countries as I am here, but I had to give you that example. But there are many disasters around the world that we are aware of. That is why we have evidence of those images that you can see there. And the frequency of this and severities of these fires is really increasing every time. And that is because, of the climate change. That is actually also one of the contributors to the disasters that we're seeing. There's a very good relationship about that. And we are not going to talk about animals or anything like this. We'll talk about human beings' contributions towards some of these disasters that are actually being observed. So to make sure that we are quick, they've referred our continent as the fire continent, and this was recorded by NASA in 19 October 2011 online. They say it is considered a fire continent, and it accounts for around 70% of the total global fires and over 50% of the total area burned in the last 2 decades. This was reported in 2023. So how about here at home? 30.6 of South Africa is classified as extreme, and then field fire risk, 31% as high risk, and then 11.7 as medium, and 26.4 as low risk. And this is actually one of the studies that was done here, I think in 2006 by Kruger. You can also check that that article as well, and it was also, it contributed to the field fire strategy document as well in SA. So, but we want to also look into who are those contributors. If you look at it, carelessness from humans as well is what actually is contributing to some of the what we call causes of fires. And then some of the percentages, as you can look at them, smoking, some they become so negligent to also contribute to these fires that we see. And major deaths were also picked up somewhere there in the last year, where we see so much death. But there are efforts out there, Doctor, where we are seeing that remote sensing, sort of capabilities are there that are actually feeding into the data that we see and the stats that we are also seeing here in terms of fire detection. Why am I saying that? Many will tell you that we already have, your MODIs. MODIs, have been feeding data to ESCOM for some years. I know that, I don't know if we have next gen here on EFIS, but they will confirm to you about that. It's one of the satellites that also provide information on them. But these satellites, they also have their own limitations. Some of them, we can talk about the temporal effect, about the revisit time. We can also talk about the resolutions. So I've listed most of them there. And some of them, they can be obscured by smoke, but the infrared at least can be able to detect fire even through smoke, and thereby what will be the issue with infrared band is mainly about, the technology itself in terms of high resolutions detection on the ground is still a bit of an issue. And some of these are really bulky in a way that if you need precision detection, it means you need to cool the detector itself. And thereby it means that you can't necessarily be able to build a nanoset with such an infrared detector that is actually cool. So what did we do and why I'm here? We then sat down, it was around 2016, and we then look into the EFIS requirements, and then we said, okay, maybe we can be able to come up with another principle using spectroscopy to say, okay, but a plant absorbs, some of the nutrients, during growth. That requires so much to grow. And those elements, when it is actually burning, they must actually go somewhere. And then if we can be able to use a principle sort of in the lab to do spectrographs, it means that you can select a specific, wavelength, considering that your fire is like a broadband light. Put in maybe a spectral instrument to only select a certain band of an element. That is where the element is actually emitting. Based on the studies that potassium is actually abundant on the ground and is also again abundant on the plant itself. And thereby, if it is burning, it must go somewhere. So we did exactly that. And what we found is that when it is burning, it releases some elements. And the elements of focus became that because of the reason that it has a very low, excitation energy. It means that at a particular temperature of the fire, it will be excited, and thereby during excitation phase, it will be able to, release energy to a particular frequency. And if you can harness that, then it means that you can be able to detect the fire. So in other words, it's more like I'm shaking you. Then when you're sweating, and then I know that, okay, you are alive or something. So that is, I'm detecting your sweat. Then it means that, yeah, no, there is an action that is happening on you. But detecting this element, it tells us there is a fire, other than detecting heat. So we did this study somehow we put our sensor out there, and then we then asked ourselves, can you be able to see or look at it in terms of transmission? We did what we call, radiative transfer modeling. I will skip this one, Doctor. I shouldn't talk much about that. But what we did was to make sure that, we look at our atmospheric data and say, model the atmosphere. Because knowing that the atmosphere itself is just not an empty, sort of like an empty or vacuum room where there is no elements. There are elements there that are abundant enough where they can be able to prevent your detection. The longer you go, the more, you can find absorptions increasing. So what we did, we found that, okay, within the potassium, it has two regions where it emits. It emits over the 766 as well as the 770. So we took into the top of the atmosphere going down, knowing that you have somewhere closer to the sun there, you have what we call the Fraunhofers. They appear as dark lines over there, but I will skip. I know, Dr. Yu. So what we then did, we did all those classes from top and also bottom up. And then we saw that, in our planet at the Earth, we saw that your oxygen dominance, it affect or impact what we call our detectability. But it only deals with the 766. Then 770 there, it's actually transmitted. And those dotted are the oxygen ones. And those were the ones that were actually of concern. So that is why we then confidently confirm that actually we can build a sensor that can sit over that single wavelength and then be able to detect the fire that we are looking for. So we did that, exactly that, and that is why you are able to, let me try. So that's why you were able to see some of these detections that you can see over there. We placed a sensor in one of the researchers' house. He was observing some fires over the Mahalis, and then he was able to pick these images and then be able to, sum up all these imageries and be able to give us that image that you can see over there. But 3 minutes. Thank you, Doctor. So I'm about to finish, and most of this is mostly physics-based. I know, Doctor, you've already indicated that I'm doing PhD, so I will skip this because I'm not here to defend my case. So, so we did all the dry gas, surface and member spectral reflectance. It means we were aware that in terms of reflectance, because we are using the near infrared, where we are detecting the K-line, its spectral emission is in the near infrared. So what we needed to do, it was to also understand that what are other elements that can actually deter us or act as clutter over that very same band. That is why we are seeing this study that was actually done. And then be able to also create a model that represents the K-line over all the other clutters that we are able to see. So we were able to do that, and once we were done, we were able to confirm that actually K-line is able to, hey, I'm still continuing with the research. So we had to go to what we call concentrations in terms of vegetation. Are we sure that vegetation has this element? We needed also to do what we call the ICP AES, that is induced coupled plasma atomic emission spectroscopy. So it has to be done under the University of Stellenbosch. That's where I'm registered there. So we did exactly that. So all of these are the results of what was done down there at Stellenbosch, and it evidently shows us that there is indeed potassium. But one thing that you will be interested in is the results of what we did at Centurion, and we did fly our sensor in a fleet deployment exercise, providing the fire detection imagery. We set up a fire of size of 0.5 by 0.5 meters, and we flew our UAV over different angles, 20, 45, 90 degrees, simulating push brooms and all those things. And we were able to, make these detections that you can see over here. So it means that we not only did laboratory studies, but we were also able to, capture results that were very critical for our own, confirmations. And we flew this at around 200 meters, but the only limitations was telemetry. So not because the sensor couldn't be able to do detection over higher range. Yeah, this is R&D. It is because this is just to show off. We have already launched the satellites in 2018. Doc, I think you might be aware of this. So one thing that we needed to do was to make sure that we do our own custom, what we call, environmental testing. We had to design what we call a vacuum chamber. That vacuum chamber was meant to be able to, simulate the compact chamber that is actually required for sensors that are used on a nano, these small sensors that we built. So we needed to do that and also confirm the transition between atmospheric, what we call environment that we live in to your external, or what we call exo-atmospheric. It means what will happen when you have a sensor that can detect here when it goes outside of the, of our planet, because it needs to then be able to see what is down here. So we needed to consider the vacuum element. So we needed to simulate that inside there and then put up a concentric, square target that is meant to simulate what we considered as what we call vacuum shift, because lenses from one end to the other, which is the index, it changes from one, air to vacuum. But let's leave that. That is why we did this whole studies. Then we launched it in 2018, and that is the payload there to show you that we really did a lot of work, and I'm happy that TIA, they are really recognizing that work. And then let me close off by showing you that these are detections that you have never seen from K-Line. This is some fires, and it was a prototype. It was for us to say we want to just test it, not because we were saying that we're going to detect. We wanted to just test from space. So it was actually launched in 2018 using COTS cameras, meaning that these were not space qualified components. And we did a lot of work in order to achieve this kind of things. We won't talk about all those. And we were able to capture a lot of things. So now the idea now is to do what we call a constellation. And we are already looking into that. And in conclusion, I want to say we have presented a means of performing space-based remote sensing for enhanced and timely detection of wildfires using low-cost nanosatellite technology, of which we are hoping that STI has already touched. They will be able to support that via funding. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, the aspiring doctor. Now I clearly understand, General, when you say you want his brain, not him, just his brain. Thank you very much. Sujo, please come and give your talk. Please just, if you can try, and I know you are a businessman, so you don't have enough cash flow. Yeah. So you want to make it snappy, right? So that we can give Dr. Zondi enough time.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Over to you.
How do I...
You can use this one. I know you are not afraid of this.
Yeah. Ooh. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. It's fine. My name is Sujo. I was recently killed, and I came back as a soldier. I'm resilient. So I have some key things to say. One is, for those of you that have children that are young, please send them to the military. It will fix all problems. The second thing I want to highlight, if you think about most pictures of the world that you've seen, generally speaking, Africa is in the center of that, and you have everything else around us. Yet, if you think about the impact of Africa in terms of technology, we are not there that much. We must always remember that as Africa, we have a lot to contribute. That's why we are there at the center. We must just take advantage of it. And if you hear the number of past speakers, characters, individuals, multiple PhDs, multiple masters, multiple educations of everything. The country does not have a lack of skill. It does not have a lack of ingenuity. It does not have a lack of capability. So, as mentioned earlier, sovereignty is a key issue. We've heard it a number of times here. Underneath that, communications is simply the most important driver in running any organization. Without communication in your organization, nothing's going to happen, especially distributed organizations, right? Yet, almost every country in the world, barring a few, are dependent on a single provider for government-wide communications. That becomes a huge risk. If that technology is controlled and switched off because of embargoes, sanctions, whatever the reason, you will come to a grinding halt. Doesn't matter what other technologies you have, what other capabilities you have, if you cannot communicate, you're dead in the water. So we have started to work with the CSIR, we've been working with them for some time, around a sovereign secure communication collaboration platform, a capability to replace what is, quite frankly, foreign controlled always. What are the implications in terms of this capability, this communication capability? Vendor lock-in, we talk about all of these interesting technologies, but what happens when we don't have choice to move somewhere else? When we are put in a corner, when prices increase? Mentioning a number of these criteria, you find that this information that we are quite freely sharing because we believe it's internal to the organization is actually mined for various purposes, whether it's intelligence, whether it's for advertising. All of these kind of capabilities exist when you share your data without punity or with impunity. There are unseen supply chain weaknesses in these technologies because they are dependent on open source or various types of capabilities that are actually not maintained from a cybersecurity point of view, creating further risk in your supply chain. And of course, unwitting compliance to other governments' compliance or requirements. Let me put it that way. So, for example, you might have a helicopter. So taking it away from the IT side, you might have a helicopter, but your engine is coming from a particular supplier in a particular jurisdiction. When you pick a fight with that person's friend, and this friend of yours that supplied you the engine says, you know what, use your helicopter, but you can't switch on our engines. Can you imagine what that means in terms of your capability to react? Those are, and that is a much more military, orientated example. But that is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about communications that are core to government operations. So drivers around sovereignty, the requirement, the need, geopolitical uncertainty. We have seen today that we are quite sensitive to geopolitical uncertainty. Any change in characteristics will affect us. It does affect us. We were under the threat of sanctions very recently. And technology that comes from that threatening country is underpinning almost everything. Almost everything that we do in our country. So we, as a country, are great at being consumers, but not, developers. Invention, innovation, both sides of that coin need to exist inside South Africa. We have the skill, we have the capability. What we have is systemic issues that don't help us to get to that end, Uncontrolled external access to data. I'm not going to go through everything here, but I think a key one here, profit incentive guides decisions. Companies are driven by profit, especially big ones from overseas. They are driven by profit. They make decisions. Some key examples were discussed earlier. They make decisions to benefit themselves at the expense of what the country can do. I'm happy to share this in any form that you guys want, but we can talk about it later. Benefits of sovereignty, of course, like I mentioned earlier, it's important to reduce consumption. We are very good at buying and taking that 10% margin keeping that. But that 10% will never create jobs. It's not going to do that. What creates jobs, as mentioned by our esteemed colleagues, is about creating products in South Africa, exportable products that will make a difference to our people. You will see organizations that tend to have sales offices in our country. Why are we not part of the engineering teams that are developing those products? Why are we not sitting at that table? But we are here having a sales office with a lot of salespeople, but we are not actually part of the development of those products. We should be there. If we are not there, all we're doing is consuming again and continuing to consume. It destroys our ability to create skill, to nurture skill, and to export skill. The stuff that everyone before me has discussed, and I'm sure it will be a continuous discussion, is that investing in sovereignty is investing in the GDP and creating more jobs at the end. It is never a sales office that creates more jobs in this country. It is engineers, it is scientists, it is technicians. That's the kind of skill that we need. India, as mentioned earlier, has an exceptional capability of exporting skill and bringing, what is the term for foreign exchange, back into the country. You know, hard currency comes back into the country because they've exported those skills. Africa has no shortage of skills. If you see the amount of investment, why are those big organizations sending us a lot of internet into South Africa, into Africa? It's because they want to tap into this market. We ourselves are a huge market, yet we don't trust ourselves to take advantage of that market. State of play in a number of, thank you, Doc, digital sovereignty. Microsoft, I send a lot of stuff around why Microsoft is controlling things, especially at 4 or 5 a.m. You will find out. So the European Union has made a strong decision to try and create a digital boundary, a digital sovereignty across the EU. There are different countries with different issues. I'm not going to talk about the specific use cases, but all of the countries highlighted here, and this is a subset of those countries, have had issues around other countries controlling output on those specific democracies because of lack of sovereignty in their technology. So when I mentioned earlier that we don't have systemic support, critical to every endeavor is funding. Center of the picture, we need the funding. It's not that we don't have the funding. There's money to be spent because a lot of government departments talk about how they return money at the end of the financial year. It's not that there isn't the money. The money is there, it must be directed correctly. Supporting that, the funding around that is the competency, which we have already heard from a number of people. Competency exists in South Africa. Is it open source driven? And open source is not about the technology being open source. It's about open standards, open capabilities, so that we can copy and paste into other environments, so that we are not having the situation like we do today, where this organization pays for something and the next organization must also pay for it. Whereas if we develop in terms of, if we talk about public money for public code, it must support further enhancement in other environments. And then finally, the maintainability. This is where things fall apart. If you have a technology or an underpinning capability that is not maintained in the future, it will destroy what you have built on top of that. Strategic enablers, local competencies. We need to invest further, as a previous stakeholder had mentioned, in upskilling, resourcing, moving away from theoretical to more practical outputs, like what is TVET colleges, etc. Right? But also, that's one part of the education system. The other is just having the drive to do something. Globally, if you think about open source technologies, products, etc., the global stage has thousands of them. South Africa, handful of those capabilities. Why is that? Why are we not sitting at the table of those projects, contributing to those projects? Because by contributing, we are also going to be receiving. we are able to have that skill set, that practical skill sets that allow you to develop other things. It drives into the innovation that's required in the future, you know. Open source driven, specifically because the nature of open source gives you a powerful force multiplier without having to rebuild on stuff that's closed source, you know. Long-term maintenance, when you start at the beginning and having people that are skilled up in that space, you will find them also contributing to this long-term maintenance that's required. Open source components could very much lead to our independence and sovereignty in terms of our technology. And then again, funding. 3 minutes, 2 minutes. Tactical enablers, just a quick discussion here. Enabling technologies, they are key components that we do not have any skill sets on in this country. That is a horrific shame. PKI, public key infrastructure, very little capability in the country itself to build, to maintain, to do this. This is a key, even though the word key is in there, this is such a key component of how the internet works that you don't even know about it. It's like saying, does everyone here know what is the constituents of a road? Yet we use it every day, you know? The effect of using a road, we know what the effect is, but we don't know how to build a road ourselves. That could be, you know, tragic. Again, enabling skills, building out all of that stuff, and long-term, you know, processes in terms of support. Now, one of the sort of challenges that you will face is the PFMA that's been mentioned a few times. The PFMA is a spectacular piece of law that prioritizes successful outcome. R&D that's required here is a game of chance. You are hoping to have a successful outcome. If you don't, you will be penalized. So like the earlier guys mentioned, this orange suit because you did R&D and then you failed at R&D. Can you imagine? So the decisions don't actually happen to support what is needed in terms of innovation. This breaks down the requirements of sovereign, secure communication and collaboration platform. So why are we doing this? It's around these critical requirements from a government perspective. Like if we don't have, you know, not to sound military, but command and control of an organization, whether it's a private sector, whether it's a government department, you have command and control. Another word is management, I guess. But command and control is required in your organization. Why do you abdicate that, or why do we abdicate that command and control systems to foreign entities? So as I've talked about here, in terms of the use cases, the capability can exist in different levels of security, but across all aspects of government, all aspects of society, we can do it, you know. The end state here, sovereign technologies can be designed, developed, and sustained through public-private partnerships, through collaborations, allowing us to build those things. The only way we'll be successful with that, though, is that we are able to sell it outside. So without breaking the as the general mentioned, that thing of controlling it from here, we do what we need to do to create the jobs, which means that we have to be able to export. Exportability is a critical component of building these technologies. Research and development, as you've mentioned, or has been mentioned several times, it's critical to developing technologies because without the R&D, you know, whether it's innovation or it's invention, it's not going to happen. So we have to invest. I mean, you think about a US research organization that'll take $100 million US and split it 10 million USD into 10 companies. Whoever wins, wins. They will continue investing. The other 90 or 80 million that might be wasted, tough luck. But you get the opportunity to build something that Elon Musk has built, a SpaceX, you know, which brings how much revenue to that country also. Industry development, supporting SMMEs and capacitating them. Collaboration is critical. The amount of intellectual property that sits in their offices that could be commercialized is significant. What we need is people with appetite and drive to get that out there, commercialize it, and allow us to sell it so that we can bring the money back, we can hire more people, we can develop better, we can develop faster. And strategic direction, like I mentioned, the idea that one of the changes that we'd like to see is definitely that R&D is given its own scope in terms of the PFMA, so that it particularly handles the risk of failure. If we don't handle the risk of failure without having someone hit you over the knuckles, you will never achieve the goals that is creating jobs. No new technology. On that 10%, like I said earlier, that 10% on a deal that you did will never create jobs. It's not possible. What we need to do is invest heavily into R&D and building products. That's it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zondi. You may come in. You know, as I'm listening, I can tell you there are many PhDs that can come from these many topics. Let me see now. What is this one doing? We are going to take the last one, and we are a little bit out of time, but I will give Dr. Zondi just the time to run through his presentation, and then from there, we can take some few questions. I think there is some food afterwards. So it's that one, Doc, ne? Oh. Yeah, because yours, I think Sujo stole that thing. Where is it?
Okay, but I can do here.
Okay.
Okay. Afternoon, colleagues. I'm going to go very quick. So this is what I'm going to cover. It's basically a practical implementation of predictive maintenance within the Navy. As the doctor said, the previous one was talking about theoretical frameworks. Here we're talking about the actual implementation and use cases. So the context is that as Sandok Austral, we do a lot of work for the Navy. So one of the things we're doing for the Navy is the upgrade of the IPMS. The IPMS is the Integrated Platform Management System. It's actually a monitoring and control system. In a commercial ship, it's usually called Integrated Automation System. But basically, it's a system that gives you one full picture of situational awareness in the platform itself. So it is connected to IoT sensors that are installed on the actual subsystem in the Navy, and it gives you very good information about the condition of equipment inside the Navy. So the reason, the opportunity for that is that because you already collect the information using the IPMS, now that information is collected to a central database, and you can mine that information and develop predictive models that support predictive maintenance. So this is the evolution of maintenance. So the generations of maintenance are linked to the industrial revolution. So IR 1.0 will have maintenance 1.0. And maintenance 1.0 is reactive maintenance, breakdown maintenance in simple terms. You run it until it breaks, and then when it's broken, you replace it. The 0.2 is actually a level of preventative maintenance where you replace components before they fail. And then we are talking maintenance 4.0, which is predictive maintenance. What is the current state in the Navy? The current state in the Navy is the combination of reactive maintenance and some preventive maintenance, which is routine-based. Obviously, once it breaks, it's too late and it's costly. You are at the mercy of the supplier. Like Sujo was saying, if now we must fly a new engine from MTU in Europe so that you can fix a diesel genset inside the ship, you do not really have much choice. It's broken. It's a dead ship. You need to resuscitate, and it's very expensive. And downtime is a big issue in terms of mission readiness, General. Reliability, availability is very important. Availability, it must be there when you need it. Reliability, it must be there all the time when you need it. So I like this quote. Downtime must not be averted or blocked when it comes, but it must be hunted down and eliminated. As I said, the biggest enemy of availability and reliability is downtime. And reliability and availability is the ingredients that go into mission readiness. The architecture, I'm not gonna go into detail. I think I told you about the IPMS. Basically, you've got sensors on the subsystems on the ship. They feed the information to a central area. That's your IPMS. And you're monitoring each and every subsystem in the ship, the critical subsystems, obviously. What the tech is PDM? PDM is predictive maintenance. So in a nutshell, what are you trying to do with predictive maintenance is the following. You identify the problem before it becomes a problem. And then you develop insights that will solve the problem before it becomes problematic. That's it. That's what you're doing. And how you're doing it, like I said, you take the information, you mine the data that you collected through IoT sensors. In military, we call it IOMT, Internet of Military Things. You mine it, and then you use your AI ML algorithms to actually process it, and then you build your predictive models to tell you what kind of failure you will experience when. The benefits, mission readiness, a big thing, like I said. If you can predict when it's going to fail, you intervene before it fails. Mission readiness is availed. Cost reduction, expensive reactive maintenance, as I said, breakdown is expensive. Preventive maintenance in terms of routine maintenance is also very expensive because you're going to replace bearings before they fail, simply because you said you run your bearing for 7,000 hours and then it must change, it must be replaced. So without knowing the exact condition of the main bearing, for example, main channel bearing, which is quite expensive in the ship. Extended asset life, the remaining useful life is extended. And then resource optimization. The critical technical skills can be allocated to the equipment that actually contributes directly to mission readiness, which is very important. How do you implement it? The first thing, like the general was saying, understand what the requirements are. So don't superimpose a template of a maintenance solution. The Navy has serious maintenance issues, but you need to be able to articulate the maintenance problem as you understand it and as the Navy understands it. And then identify subsystems. You cannot PDM your way out of everything in the ship. In actual fact, it's not necessary. It's expensive. So what are the critical subsystems that contribute directly or the most to mission readiness? Deal with those. Define failure modes. So we have a system called FMEA, which is failure mode and effect analysis. It's a model for engineering where you identify failure modes and you categorize and you prioritize them. You need to do that before you apply PDM, because PDM will be linked to that. So that when we predict which failure modes are going to occur, we base it on that model. And when we predict which interventions do we need to do when, we base it on that model. Pilot, you need to pick a pilot, a POC, proof of concept. In our case, we chose the gen sets for the Navy. And then, of course, you're going to have a full rollout. And then how does FMEA work? You take historical failure data, you take expert opinions, and then you take some data that is linked to the product, like the material of the actual component, and then of course the operational aspects of it, like how long it runs, cycles, etc., etc. The failure modes that we've identified in the Navy are those ones: corrosion, fatigue, crack, cavitations on pump. It's a big thing in the Navy, and of course the effect: low pressure. If your pump is cavitated, there's low pressure, and then there could be overpressure if something is also broken, and then there's emission where there is a crack and some liquid or fluid comes out into the environment. So how does it work? The FMEA is very important. How does it work? You have those three parameters, which is severity, likelihood, detectability. Severity is how severe the impact if it fails. And the likelihood is, what is the likelihood of it failing? And then how well can you detect it? And you rank those from 1 to 10, and then you calculate what we call an RPN, risk priority number, which is basically a product of the two. This is the example of how we did it. So a cylinder head bolt is the component. The failure mode is that the bolts can be loose or they shear on the heads, too much vibration, they shear. And then time to repair, it's in the stock. So it's 1 to 3 hours, you're going to get it in the inventory. Relatively severe, the consequences, it can happen frequently, you can detect it. So 84 is the RPN. How do you mitigate it? Regular inspection. If you go down to the bottom, you'll see 128 is relatively high because it's a freshwater circulation pump. And if it fails, there's a serious problem there. You'll see when the TTR is high, the RPM tend to be high. That's how you prioritize. This is one for the genset. Look, we did the whole components of a genset. As you will know, gensets got like tens and tens of subsystems. So we did the whole entire thing. I just show you here the importance of it. Here I added effect, that the fourth column from my left, which like for the cylinder block, it's a dead engine. If you have cracks, obviously that's a dead engine. You can't. And again, if you look at, that's the highest one, 6 to 8 months to actually fix it, and the consequences are dire. What the IPMS does is that it's connected to IoT sensors, but sometimes the IoT sensors of the IPMS, because they were designed for the purposes of situational awareness in the ship, but also of battle damage control, for example. So when the ship is damaged, you need to pick up which hatches to close and monitor if there's any flooding in the ship, etc., and see how you can intervene. If there's fire inside, you need to control the HVAC system. So you have the IT sensors there, but you may need more. So you may add the vibration analysis for rotating equipment, ultrasonic testing, etc. And you consolidate all that information, because with your AI ML algorithm, you can process both structured and unstructured data. And once you have done all that, identify the critical subsystems, you have done your FMEA, you've chosen your pilot, then you have to develop your model. And your model is based on those applications. Classification model, clustering model, I'm not going to go into that. I think that's AI 101. And of course, it's supervised for structured data, unsupervised, as well as reinforcement learning for learning as you go. So what is involved in the predictive maintenance development process? As I said, it's the historical data, which is very important. And then that data has to be processed, like normalizing the data. And then feature engineering. Sometimes you have to combine variables. Sometimes you have to develop new features in order to link them to the FMEA model that you've developed. And then you need to choose an appropriate algorithm, regression, classification, etc. The model needs to be trained, and obviously garbage in, garbage out. So the data that you feed the model needs to be of superior integrity, without biases, without errors, etc. And then evaluation of that. And then it becomes domain knowledge, because once you've done all that, it needs to come back to be domain knowledge of the maintenance team within the ship. So, and there is our solution. It's Intel PDM 4.0, and it's real-time monitoring, and you can integrate it to the computer maintenance management system. And because of our in-depth understanding of the naval maintenance requirements, we did it custom-made for the Navy. It's got 7 modules. You've got data acquisition, processing, you've got detection, you've got diagnosis, prognosis, and in the end, you've got the HMI, which is the presentation of all the information to the operator. What can it accomplish? I think the first slide showed that the Navy spends currently up to 20% of its operational budget on platform maintenance. Okay, I'm saying platform maintenance because there's maintenance of weapon systems as well in the Navy, and that alone has a huge requirement in terms of budget. But platform maintenance alone is, if the Navy is allocated 500 million this year as an operational budget, then 20% of it is platform. And we can save up to 30%, and we've demonstrated that. And then we can extend the asset life by up to between 10 and 20 years. It requires a paradigm shift in the Navy, and as the general was saying, we have a lot of bureaucracy. Sometimes It takes a lot just to get a platform to be able to test new tech sometimes, because DI, defense intelligence, imposes so many things on you. But it's not necessary really if you need to be agile in terms of technology deployment. It's a strategic imperative, because the Navy doesn't have a budget. You need to be creative about how we spend money on maintenance and sustaining capabilities. And there's tangible outcomes, and the Navy has an opportunity to set a benchmark standards for the rest of the SANDF. Thank you, Chair. I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Doc. That was practical in terms of what we have done. I think, as I said, we are 5 minutes over, but because many of you, it's almost end of the day, I can allow maybe for 1 or 2 questions, if you have, because we had some very thought-provoking talks with the general telling us that we must be aligned to their thinking, and we've heard from Malisa as well and the rest. So, and I think the topics were very much relevant. And I could, sitting from here, I could sense with my cyber spirit the tension in your veins. If I could measure your blood pressure, I could see it going up. But I like that the doc tried to calm you down as well. But just to show as well that it's not all doom and gloom. And I think if we align to what we're saying, walk with the soldier, understand the problem, get into his brain, let's do things with speed, right? But I think I like what Dr. Zondi was also showing now. Sometimes when you understand, when you are in the problem, you are able to customize the solution to meet the issue. I always say to my team, we are not good at stealing. But if we work with people who understand how to steal, we'll be able to find solutions to prevent stealing. Isn't it? That's generally the case. Because if you think as a researcher, you would understand solutions to solve stealing, it's going to be a problem. Because Edwin is going to take almost, I think he said 2016 when they started with the project. And the criminal is not going to be found. By the time we find the criminal, probably is in Dubai. So any other questions? I think let me open just for 1 or 2 questions. There was one question that was posted. I think they were asking, maybe I'll ask the team, but the question was about what is the effective way, if I remember it correctly, the effective way of investing into building homegrown tools? Because people spoke about it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of investment. We may not have the billions that Microsoft has, because Microsoft can invest $1 billion, and I always say this, they can easily invest $1 billion in just building one data center. And in South Africa, probably DDG, that's the whole budget for research and development. So we can't match. Any other question? Yes. Maybe introduce yourself and then quickly ask. Yeah.
Hi, Aslam Rafi from a company called SUSE. We're the largest independent open source company. In 2007, I did take an open source policy to cabinet that was approved. My question is, and in fact, when we tried to convince Department of Defense, I was told we just have to wait for some people to retire before we can make any progress with defense. But just generally, the question is to the group, how do we actually get more investment? I've heard open source come up. How do we actually get greater adoption of open source in the country and in government in particular?
Thank you. Any of the speakers who want to take it quickly? Sujo, please take it quickly. And then maybe at the same time, somebody, how do we effectively invest? Because where do we get the money?
Is it on?
It's open source.
Let me close it.
Yeah.
So look, there's no easy answer to this, right? Open source requires dedication over time. You will see that open source subsystems or systems, etc., are built with a lot of passion. Sometimes there are a very small team that is excited to do this, right? What we have to do conceptually is force companies that when we procure from them, we must tangibly see how they invest in the open source community that is supporting their products in the first place. If we don't have a mechanism to measure that, so like you think about transformation, there are different laws and charters that really talk to transformation. But in terms of open source is very much a fundamental part of many products, but you don't see the tangible execution of supporting those. And second to that, you will have to also invest in the country's skills to support those kind of things, so that we have a collaborative effort to be part of the development of those things. Otherwise, it's again back to consumption. So we need to close the gap so that we are able to be part of the building of systems. Otherwise, we won't have adoption.
Thank you. Melissa, do you want to take the investment one? Since we are the person with the money.
Thanks. I'll try to be very brief. I'd like to just answer it in two folds, because I think
you must look at them, because everyone was talking to me. I'm just the program director.
I was told that it was an online question, so I'm not sure, but I can see the camera there.
Yeah.
I'll try and attempt to answer it in two folds. The first one, it's a bit of a complaint, and my principal is there. DDG, hi. You have to be very deliberate. If you look at wealthy countries and how they invest, it's venture creation for wealth. Socioeconomic outcomes comes from the wealth, because a wealthy country has enough money to dispense it to those that needs to benefit. So being very deliberate around picking the impact areas that when you invest and what is going to come out of that. US model is the primary example. If you follow how they actually implemented the Bayh-Dole perspective, they decided we're going to have a bunch of very, very smart people from all of these that have IP sitting in their heads, and we're going to make sure that whatever IP that we identify as high opportunity, we will pump the money. Eventually, it started that whole startup movement that you start hearing things about Silicon Valley and the likes. This was a government saying we're going to invest in people to produce things that are going to give us alternative sources of income for the country, other than mainstream economies that we were used to, which is manufacturing, mining, etc. In our case, as an emerging economy with a 1 billion budget that has to go to an department and still be truncated to other entities, it is not enough. I would just recommend that maybe we look at maybe 4 or 3 critical criteria, which would be the impact of that opportunity in that particular sector, and also the transformation that we want to drive in that particular sector, and the money that will come out of those opportunities if they win and they become products that can be exported. Because with that, then we're funneling something back to the GDP, then we'll be able to have a healthy dispensation to SASA and the likes. Because right now, we are subsidizing not being able to contribute whatever fiscal allocation we should to R&D for venture creation. Thanks, Chabu.
Thank you very much. DDG, you are the last one, then we close. Can you give DDG the mic? At least this one, I can't make a mistake and say the time is over with you. I must give you the time.
This is not a right of reply, but I think it's just really to tackle this particular question, which is very important. We have over the years, and especially because I've been involved in in working on space science issues, including the work that we've done on looking at the capabilities for a whole range of things, including rocket engine manufacturing and launching, and actually the satellite manufacture. Now, if we want to talk about the sovereign capabilities, I think we almost have to destroy all the departmental walls, because that's where the problem is. We did a calculation of what it will require for us to have a satellite. Now, South Africa doesn't have a satellite that it is manufactured. We have manufactured small toys. And I was involved in the funding of those toys, and I can tell you that if you look at the budget that we had to manufacture those toys, it wasn't there. It was the ideas that were there, and on the basis of those ideas, I was able to go around and get some monies from somewhere for people who were not able to use it to develop those tube set that we talk about so much. There was no budget that says satellite manufacturing. And I think that we need to then say how many government departments are actually party to the use, for example, of satellite data. You can count up to almost every single department. And we can't together put something like 3 billion rand to have a decent satellite. And for me, that's where the problem is. So effective investment means that we need to have a model of investment where we say, when it comes to us building this capability of a state, we need to have something about budgeting that is above the departments. Because while we are not investing in manufacturing, we are actually consuming a lot of those products. And when you add up what we consume per year, it will by far exceed what we'll actually use to invest. So I have been at the forefront of fighting this battle, and part of it also on behalf of our beloved entity here, where we are saying, why do we have a CSIR, which is a government entity established by government, and when the CSIR is supposed to render a service to the government that funds it, it must tender. And then some company from the US or from Europe wins the tender. And 3 months later, we're sitting and saying, we need to deal with the headcount at the CSIR because we don't have money. So I think for me, that's the kind of mentality that when the general was speaking, I was, you don't know what kind of feelings that you want to have, but I think we just need to get our heads correct in terms of how we invest in research and any other area, because then you want to move from research into manufacturing and then seeing how do you then, as the state first, procure what you have funded. And the last point I'm going to make, because it's very related, we want to digitize in government. We want to digitize everything. Education. And until we say that if we want to digitize in education, how many tablets do we need to buy? How many computers do we need to buy? What about issues of connectivity? And if you look at all those things, you actually have a business case that says develop and manufacture locally, because you got an uptake, firstly starting with government. So I do think that it's something that as government at the highest level, we need to begin to say, firstly, how do we deal with issues of PFMA? And secondly, how do we actually think and be scared about what is happening? Our reliance, we're talking about Microsoft investing 1 billion, that they don't even invest. What they give OpenAI per year.
Amen.
You're not gonna fall, right?
Amen.
Yeah. It's like hundreds of millions of dollars. In fact, billions of dollars just on OpenAI spend. We're not even talking about what they're investing on data centers. Serious monies. So if we don't organize our little billions and do what we can do, then we actually stand no chance. So that really is my view, and I really want people, I know that there are colleagues here from other government departments, we need a completely new way of thinking. We shouldn't really, as Aslam said, we shouldn't wait for some generals to die. We are here, we need to get to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have eaten, we are full. This is the end of our session. Apologies for finishing a little bit later, but because everyone was here and didn't move, it meant this was worth it. And we want to thank you for gracing us. There are difficult questions, there's difficult road ahead, but I like what the commissioner said. Let's act, let's do the little bit that we can, and sooner or later we'll cross River Jordan. Have a great evening further. Thank you very much.